as he's reading her face. He likes what he sees. Doesn't see any anger or disgust or worry. No. None of that is on her face. And then verse 4, your neck is like the tower of David, built for an army, on which hang 1,000 bucklers, all shields of mighty men. The neck, as we discussed last month, is also symbolic of a submission to God. Somebody who is stiff-necked is somebody who is stubborn, and God hates a stiff-necked person. Someone, what he desires is a neck that is not stiff. It's loose. It'll look up to him when he's talking to him. And bow down to him in prayer and in submission. Okay, and then finally, he praises her breasts. Your breasts are like two fawns, twins of a gazelle, which feed among the lilies. This refers to the nurturing nature of his bride. By praising her breasts, he is praising her compassion, her heart. Okay, and thus forth. But then we come to verse 6. And here he takes like a break from the praise he's heaping upon her. He's heaping upon her. He says, until the day breaks and until the shadows flee away, I will go my way to the mountain of myrrh and to the hill of frankincense. He's using the same words that she spoke to him when he visited her that night at her home. I'll read again in chapter 2, verse 17. She says to him, until the day breaks and the shadows flee away, turn my beloved up the mountains of Bether. So now he's saying to her, until the day breaks and the shadows flee away, I will go my way to the mountain of myrrh and to the hill of frankincense. So he's saying to her, I'm going up that mountain. Will you come with me this time? He once again is extending the invitation. And I look at this is my personal interpretation. I will go my way to the mountain of myrrh. Myrrh is a burial spice, and he is going to the mountain of myrrh. Mountain of death, perhaps. Calvary, Golgotha, that was on a hill, that was on a mountain. Could be a foreshadowing of Jesus going to Calvary, okay, and to the hill of frankincense. Again, myrrh and frankincense, gifts that were brought to baby Jesus by the wise men. Okay, and after he says that, he continues on with his praise of her. He says, you are all fair, my love, and there is no spot in you. Whoa, did you catch that? And there is no spot in you. You go to the New Testament, and there it says Jesus is coming back for a bride without what? Without spot, wrinkle, or blemish. Again, we have a New Testament foreshadowing here in this verse, and there is no spot in you. Continuing on, come with me from Lebanon, my spouse, with me from Lebanon. Look from the top of Amana, from the top of Sinor and Hermon, from the lions' dens, from the mountains of the leopards. And he's saying, look from the top of all these mountains. He says, come, let's conquer these mountains together. And then we can look on top and just and see what's been accomplished. Verse 9. You have ravished my heart, my sister, my spouse. Okay, that word ravished. Okay, there's a twofold definition of the word ravished. One is to take by force, and two, it's to fill with delight. And I believe they both apply here. He says to her, you have ravished my heart. He's saying to her, you've taken my heart. You have my heart. And he also is saying to her, you have filled my heart with delight. Now, this is him talking to her. He's saying to her, you have done this for me. And, that just seems overwhelming that that any of us could ravish the heart of Jesus. But we do. We do. In fact, it was because he was so ravished by all of us that he was willing to pay the price to save us, because he did not want to see us perish and to see his beloved be away from him forever. It's what he was willing to pay, because his heart was first ravished for us. Okay, with one look of your eyes, with one link of your necklace, how fair is your love, my sister, my spouse. Again, he calls her fair. So many times here in the Song of Solomon, he calls her fair. And, you go back to the first chapter when she says, I am dark, but lovely. That's the first thing she says about herself. I am dark. It's just an acknowledgement of her own personal darkness, her own sin. But he's saying to her, no, not anymore. You are fair. You are a fair maiden. And then he says, how much better than wine is your love, and the scent of your perfumes than all spices. In the beginning, in the first chapter, she praised him by saying to him, your love is better than wine. And now he actually returns the compliment. He feels the same way. How much better than wine is your love and the scent of your perfumes. He's also praising her scent, which is exactly what she did back into back in chapter 1 and verse 3. She says to him, because of the fragrance of your good ointments, your name is ointment poured forth through the earth. So the words that she first said to him, he is now repeating back to her, spoken with the same amount of love and the same amount of passion. And then verse 11, your lips, O my spouse, drip as the honeycomb. Honey and milk are under your tongue, and the fragrance of your garments is like the fragrance of Lebanon. Again, he praises her mouth. Only this time, look at the description. Honey and milk are under your tongue. What was the promised land called? It was called the land of milk and honey. So now he's saying to her, your mouth is a promised land. Again, this is how much he desires the mouth of his bride. And we got to let that sink in, because when we realize just how special and valuable our mouths are, we have to just make a constant effort to be aware that we cannot defile our own mouths. We cannot let lies and gossip and slander and curses and wicked words that are deceptive, and words that injure people come out, because that would defile the promised land. And we just got to realize the words that come out of our mouths have to come from that of a promised land, something that God values. Jesus said, every idle word shall be held accountable. I mean, why such a high standard? It's because he values the human mouth so much. Because it's a promised land. It should be a promised land. So anything that would defile such a valuable thing, must be dealt with. Okay. All right. Now we move to verses 12 through 15. Here he begins to describe his Shulamite bride as a garden. Verse 12, a garden enclosed is my sister, my spouse, a spring shut up, a fountain sealed. Now, let's compare quickly a garden with a field. A field is something that serves a monetary purpose. It's used in business. The fruits that come out of a field are then harvested and sold for profit. And then they're also used to feed not only the owner of the field himself, but his family also. It serves a very, very practical use, but it's not something that the owner is particularly emotionally attached to. But a garden, well, that's far different. You see, a garden is a place of personal pleasure. It's a place where very special and specific things, very valuable things that the owner takes great delight in grow. Now look what it says: a garden enclosed. A garden enclosed. It's fenced. It's fenced in. It's protected. Animals can get into gardens and chew them up and defile them. Well, not a garden enclosed. If it's fenced in, no animals are getting in, and no vandals either. A spring shut up, a fountain sealed. Now look what's in the garden. Your plants are an orchard of pomegranates with pleasant fruits, fragrant henna and spikenard and saffron, calamus and cinnamon, with all the trees of frankincense, myrrh, and aloes. A fountain of gardens, a well of living waters, and streams from Lebanon. There's a lot of emphasis on spices here. We're not talking about wheat or corn or any other kind of grain that's sold unto other people. We're talking about stuff that's grown for beautiful smells, and it just represents beauty. The things that are grown here, pleasant fruits, sweet smells, sweet spices, and a fountain of gardens, a well of living waters, and streams from Lebanon. And the Shulamite's response in verse 16, she says, "Awake, O north wind, and come, O south." The north wind. The north winds are cold. The north winds are harsh. And yet she's saying, awake. I'm ready to face the north wind. And then come, O south. The south winds, they're warm and they're gentle. So north winds represent the trials of life, and the south winds represent the blessings of God. She's not necessarily she's not necessarily praying for the north wind to just dominate her. She's just saying, if you're going to come, north wind, I'm ready for you. I'm not afraid to face you. Okay, and then she says, "Blow upon my garden, that its spices may flow out. Let my beloved come into his garden and eat its pleasant fruits." Now, look what it says, blow upon my garden. Therefore, she is claiming ownership to her garden. But then in the next line, it says, "Let my beloved come into his garden." She's now saying, my garden is now his garden. All I am and all I have now belongs to him. This is now a believer being in total submission to Jesus. A believer that now understands, I am his. I belong to him. My life is not my own. Jesus is not there to bless my life. He is to have my life, take possession of it, so that he may do as he wants with it. Then we come to chapter 5, verse 1. And the beloved says, "I have come into my garden, my sister, my spouse." So once she hands over ownership of herself to him, he claims it. He now calls her my garden. "I have gathered my myrrh with my spice. I have eaten my honeycomb with my honey. I have drunk my wine with my milk." He is just now taking great delight in what is now his. And then further down, he says, "Eat, O friends. Yes, drink deeply, O beloved ones." This is where somebody truly becomes a witness to others. He is just inviting others to see what is his. when somebody is truly sold out to Jesus, Jesus just flows through them. And that's when people see a genuine difference in this person as compared to somebody who is in the world. That's what being a witness is. There's just something just supernatural about someone who is just totally surrendered to Jesus. I remember, in college, when I met a group of students called Basic Ministries, which Basic stands for Brothers and Sisters in Christ. And when I came across these people, I was just blown away, because they were just radically in love with Jesus, and just the way they sang about him, the way they spoke of him, the way they prayed in tongues to him. I mean, they were just feeling genuine emotion, and I never saw this kind of love growing up in a church. I was a preacher's kid, grew up in church, and I was taught, do right and wrong. No, this is God. This is how God wants us to act. But growing up, I never truly grasped that there could be an intimate relationship between myself and him. When I thought of God, I just saw him as just someone who just kind of lives up in the sky, just observing, just taking notes of what this person does and what that person does. Just kind of distant and not really involved with anybody's life. But when introduced to people who were truly born again, spirit filled, in love with Jesus, I just said, whatever it is, I want that. I want that. And this is what Jesus means. Shine the light. Let others taste what you have tasted. Okay. So now we go on to verse 2 of chapter 5. She's back, in her bed, in her house. She says, I sleep, but my heart is awake. It is the voice of my beloved. So again, he is again visiting her at night while she's in bed. There it says, he knocks, saying, open for me, my sister, my love, my dove, my perfect one. For my head is covered with dew, and my locks with the drops of the night. So his head is covered with dew. For his head to have been covered in dew, he had to have been out in the night for a long, long time. There are those who say this is Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane, right before he is about to be arrested and taken to be crucified, because he was out in the garden all night in prayer, with as he was sweating drops of blood. And what he's saying here is like, are you willing to join me in my sufferings? Which is exactly what Paul prayed, to find the joy in his sufferings. And her response, starting in verse 3, I have taken off my robe, how can I put it on again? I have washed my feet, how can I defile them? Well, here is a bit of hesitation, because he's calling for her at a bit of an inconvenient time. She's just gone to bed, and now he's saying, all right, now get up and open the door. It was like, I just gone to bed. But, there are times when God does call us at seemingly inconvenient times. We have our plans all set out, and God says, no, changing plans. Well, even though she's at first hesitant, and she does come around in verse 4, she says, my beloved put his hand by the latch of the door, and my heart yearned for him. I arose to open for my beloved. So there, that heart sickness, that desire to be with him, she's saying, my beloved left me before, I'm not losing him again, so I'm getting up. And then in verse 5, I arose to open for my beloved, and my hands dripped with myrrh, my fingers with liquid myrrh on the handles of the lock. So now she's covered in myrrh. She's like covered in liquid myrrh. She's covered in this burial spice, which doesn't make logical sense. Why would she go to bed covered in a burial spice? Well, I believe that what this is symbolic of is she's now ready to go with him to the mountain of myrrh. She's ready to, shall we say, die to herself and follow him. Going back to what I said earlier, Jesus says you gotta pick up your cross every day and follow me. Picking up your cross every day means to die to yourself every day. Back then, when you picked up your cross, you were carrying your cross to your own execution. So, and after your own execution, your own burial. So she is. So with it, when it says, "And my hands drip with myrrh," you could say she's actually being covered by him. She was covered by him, covered by the blood, perhaps. Liquid myrrh. Who knows? Okay, verse 6. I opened for my beloved, but my beloved had turned away and was gone. My heart leaped up when he spoke. I sought him, but could not find him. I called him, but he gave me no answer. Then she says, the watchman went about the city and found me. And then it says, they struck me. They wounded me, the keepers of the walls, took my veil away from me. So now she's being abused. Here she is, she's back in the city, she's running after her beloved. And here the watchmen, the ones who are supposed to be protectors, they're now doing her harm. Well, sometimes spiritual leaders do young believers harms, those who are very religious-minded and not very spiritual. I think of Job and his 3 friends. Job has just lost everything. He's in this great. He's just in the pits, the lowest point of his life. And what do his three friends do? Well, this has to be your fault. It's they just continue to heap on the abuse, even though they're sounding religious, they're sounding like the good guys. No, they're just making things worse. So I believe this is what she's suffering with these watchmen wounding her. And then verse 8, she then says, I charge you, O daughters of Jerusalem, if you find my beloved, that you tell him I am lovesick. I mean, she is just desperate to be back with him. And she's saying to the daughters of Jerusalem, the immature believers, she's expressing just how much she is desiring Jesus. And the daughters of Jerusalem respond in verse 9, What is your beloved? More than another beloved, O fairest among women. What is your beloved more than another beloved that you so charge us? So they're just wondering, why are you lovesick over him? What is so special about him that you have this zeal for him, this desire to find him? Yeah, I mean, immature believers, they may be saved, they may be born again, but they have yet to truly understand what it means to be in love with Jesus. And when they truly get around, with someone who's truly in love with him, it's very, very strange to them. It's just very odd. Same thing happened to me when I walked into a basic group and couldn't make sense of what I was seeing. All this love for Jesus. So she replies in verses 10 through 16. She begins to praise her beloved in the same way that he praised her. There's a lot of back and forth happening here when it comes to praise. She praises him, and she praises him, and then he returns her praise. And then he praises her, and then she returns his praise. I mean, it's a back and forth relationship. Okay. She starts by saying, okay, my beloved is white and ruddy, chief among 10,000. His head like the finest gold. His locks are wavy, as black as raven. His eyes are like doves. Meaning Jesus' eyes are fixed on us. Always. Okay, by the rivers of waters, washed with milk and fitly set. His cheeks are like a bed of spices, banks of scented herbs. His lips are like lilies, dripping liquid myrrh. His hands are like rods of gold set with beryl. His body is carved ivory, inlaid with sapphires. His legs are pillars of marble, set on bases of the fine gold. His countenance is like Lebanon, excellent as cedars. His mouth is most sweet. Yes, he is altogether lovely. This is my beloved, and this is my friend. O daughters of Jerusalem. Oh, that's huge. She's saying, this is my lover, and this is my friend. O daughters of Jerusalem. And their response in chapter 6, verse 1, where has your beloved gone, O fairest among women? Where has your beloved turned aside, that we may seek him with you? So now all of a sudden, they're just excited, you know. They're realizing that her beloved is just, this is amazing, far beyond what they first imagined. And now they want to get to know him. You know, they want to understand him. They now have a zeal to find him, just like she does. And you know, when you're a true witness of Jesus, you know, that's what people are going to get excited. They're going to see that what you feel for Jesus is real. And even though they don't understand it, they're thinking, I've got to get to know him more. And that's what he wants. He wants to know them more. And that's our job. You know, that's what we have to do to be witnesses. You know, we think about being witnesses as simply, you know, sharing the gospel. And yes, that's part of it. But it's not just sharing the gospel. It has to be shared in genuine love. Not just for Jesus, but also for the lost ones. Because it's possible to share the gospel and not love God. And or love people either. You're just out there doing your religious duty, trying to keep God from getting mad at you. You know, that's how a religious-minded person thinks. That's how a self-centered person thinks. Somebody who just doesn't know the love of God. All they know are the right words to say, and that is just truly unfortunate. Because chances are, they don't understand how much Jesus does love them. You know, they think, okay, Jesus died to save me. I'm this wicked, rotten person, so I've just got to now I've got to spend the rest of my life trying to make up for being a wicked, rotten person. And they never truly experience the love of Jesus because they don't know who they are. Amen. They don't know how much Jesus really does value them. They don't understand how Jesus truly feels about them. And this is why I just love this book so much, because the true feelings of Jesus are just revealed here in the Psalms.
Welcome. This is Sister Joan, Secretary for Upper Room Ministry. You can see the rest of this message each Sunday evening, your local time. If you would like to receive our monthly newsletter and know the things the Lord is speaking to Prophet Humphrey, then please send a love offering to help cover our expenses. Also, if you would like to have an anointed prayer cloth and become a ministry partner, send us your pictures so we can pray, lay hands on you and your need, and expect signs, wonders, and miracles in your life starting today. You will never be the same. Our website is upperroomministry.net. If you would like to schedule a speaking engagement, contact our ministry. All glory to Jesus. Amen. Amen.